With the elections just over 2 months away, there's a lot at stake and a lot to talk about. To help us wade through the issues is current Capitol Bureau Chief Chris Keating. Chris, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Hey, Chris, now Chris Donovan, he has not at this point endorsed Elizabeth Esty in his campaign. Who's going to talk to him to make him do that, and how soon is he going to do it?
Well, at the last minute, he was endorsing her. I mean, the Working Families Party was coming up and endorsed her at the last minute, and basically then he decided at that last minute to basically do it. So it seems like there's
basically done it or actually done it.
He has actually done it. Yes, it's kind of a coalescing, around, and
so it's kind of mushed now.
Yes, it took a long time. The primary was August 14th, as your viewers remember. August 14th, a little while ago. He didn't do it for a long period of time, and now he's finally done it.
It's kind of a muted endorsement, though. Shouldn't he? He should do it in person, right? Hold a press conference, do it in person?
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was done from what we saw by press release, by email, etc. Right. There was not, at least so far, an arm-in-arm public press conference where they were raising their hands up in the air. No, we haven't seen that. But there was an email endorsement.
And the labor people, the AFL-CIOs and all, are happy, content with her?
Yes. At the moment, the Working Families Party, which is essentially a creation of the unions, a union-backed party, are on her side. And yes, John Olson is with her. He's the head of the state AFL-CIO. Yes, and it seems that they're all together, and that's going to be a very close race.
They're going to need to be together.
Yes. Yes, that's a targeted race on both sides. National people will be watching that, both on the Republican side and the Democratic side, and it'll be a bit of a slugfest.
Yeah, they're watching it, the DCCC, particularly because they think it's at risk.
Yes. Yes, the DCCC. Obviously, it's an open seat that Chris Murphy had, but the Dems have had it for the last 6 years with Murphy, as you know. But traditionally, Nancy Johnson had it, and before it was redistricted, it was really a Republican seat as far as Waterbury, going back to the days of Gary Franks and Rowland and people of that nature. So traditionally, the Waterbury district in western Connecticut, for a period of time at least, was a Republican seat.
And speaking of that, Republicans are trying to push the fact that they think that the whole state is actually going back to Republican, They've been citing recent polls that have fallen to the GOP's favor, and, you know, not only for state races, but the closing of the gap between Mitt Romney and President Obama. Right.
The Republicans are doing a lot better, at least in the polling, than they had been. In other words, the Quinnipiac poll has Mitt Romney down by 7 points, or Obama ahead by 7 points, obviously. Obama beat McCain by 23 points. So the difference of that has kind of energized the Republicans a little bit. On top of that, they feel McMahon is going to do well. On top of that, they think Rohrabaugh is going to do well. So Romney, McMahon, and Rohrabaugh in the Republican mind will all do well. All those races will be closer than in recent years in Connecticut, where the Democrats won fairly big.
It's going to be interesting to see the synergy of these two races, the congressional race in the 5th and the Senate race between Murphy and McMahon, and how they, which one goes which way and affects the other one,
Right.
Affects the other race.
I think all of them will kind of feed on each other, and by that I mean I think the turnout should be pretty good. The voter turnout, A, it's a presidential year. B, McMahon is going to be banging real hard to get her people out and going to be running a lot of television commercials. Murphy's going to be pushing to get his people out, but also Rohrabaugh and Esty. So when you combine all of that together, there's really not much of an excuse to not vote in November.
You know, one thing that I think is kind of a difficult argument that the Democrats make, they keep saying, well, yes, she's winning these polls because she spent millions getting her name out. Well, she's going to keep spending millions to get her name out. So it's, how you counter that, I mean, that's an explanation for perhaps why the polls are, but it's not going to change.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it's a totally different race than 2010. In other words, McMahon has never really stopped. In other words, she's kind of been running 2010, 2011, 2012. She's really been running straight through. Maybe she hasn't been running commercials, commercials straight through, but she really hasn't stopped the campaign. So when you add it all up, it's about $65 million that she spent between 2010 and 2012. When you add all that up, basically, any adult who's been watching television in Connecticut for the last 3 years knows who Linda McMahon is. Her name recognition is sky high. She's way better known than when she started out, you know, in 2009 or early 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the governor. You know, the poll that came out, public policy poll that just came out, said that he is one of the 5 least popular governors in the whole country. So now he's midway through his term. How's he doing? What are they saying at the Capitol about the likelihood that he'll be seriously challenged the next time around?
Well, I think a lot of Republicans are lining up. Most people expect Tom Foley, who lost last time. They expect him to run again. Larry Cafaro, the
yeah, he was on
House
the program,
leader.
and he kind of, you know, you remember Larry?
Yeah.
You know, he's, you know, thinly veiled intentions,
yeah. Well,
I think.
Larry Cafaro is not one to hold his tongue.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's not going to be a shrinking violet. He's not going to hold his tongue. So whether he's in the legislature or when he's running for governor, he's going to be saying things, a lot of things, over the next 2 years. John McKinney could run. He's the Senate Republican leader.
Chris
so
Shays?
there's a series of people. Chris Shays mentioned that he could. I don't know. You know, the race against McMahon was not close at all.
No.
And some Republicans don't like Shays.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, he's an accomplished person and been around forever. Yes, so Shays is a possibility. So there's a series of people who could run against Malloy, and basically they're going to be pushing the line of, you know, the largest tax increases in Connecticut history, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Do you think that the fact that these races in the 5th and the U.S. Senate race are so close make it more likely that President Obama will come here to try to shore up the candidacies of the Democrats in those races?
It is a possibility. We looked into that. We wrote a little bit about that. The Republicans are pushing hard for Romney and Ryan to come here.
Sure.
Ryan is going to come for a fundraiser in Fairfield County on September 30th. But yes, if it gets closer, New Hampshire is in play. So New Hampshire's not very far from here.
No.
So in other words, if they're hitting the Northeast, if it does get very close and Obama feels he needs to really bring out the vote and needs a rally in Bridgeport or wherever he's going to do it, which he has in the past, yes, I can see that happening.
Yeah, and perhaps they might say it's still early, but Jerry Labriola, the chair of the GOP, does make a good point when he says, you know, the point difference in Pennsylvania and Ohio is not that different from the point difference in Connecticut. So why shouldn't we be considered a swing state?
Right. I mean, the only thing, or maybe some of the things that run against Connecticut, we don't have that many electoral votes. In other words, we basically have 7. If you want to go in Florida, there's 29 electoral votes. It's a totally different ballgame. So it would be nice for the Republicans to win Connecticut if they could, or Obama wins. Whoever gets it, they get 7 electoral votes. It's not a ton. It's not as big as Florida or Pennsylvania or some of the larger states. But it is a battle of state to state to state battle in November.
All right, Chris Keating from Hartford Courant, Capitol reporter. Thanks very much for being here with us on The Real Story today.
Thanks,
Thank
Chris.
you.
And don't forget, if you missed something here on The Real Story, you can now watch it online by going to ctnow.com. You can also catch us on YouTube.
And thanks very much for watching this week's edition of The Real Story. We'll see you here again next week.